welcome to another Friday lunchtime live stream. My name is Sean Burke. I work with Array Digital. I'm the digital ad specialist and apparently the podcast host for today. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about podcasting ahead of Marketers Anonymous happening next Friday with Kevin Griffin, Kevin Daisy, and Eric Olson, who is actually out of the state right now. And let's just start with some introductions. Kevin, do you want to introduce yourself and your podcast now that people can hear us?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm Kevin Griffin. I'm one of the co-hosts of the Two Frugal Dudes podcast. We've been on the air for about 3 years now, and actually just came in from a recording a couple minutes ago.
Fantastic. Kevin Daisy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Well, of course. So, Kevin Daisy, founder of Array Digital, and also the co-host of the Journey to $100 Million podcast.
Fantastic. So we're going to go over basically how you guys started your podcast, what kind of equipment you may have started with where you are now, how production has changed, and how you kind of keep on top of changing topics, changing guests, capturing new listeners, that kind of thing. And anyone, if you have questions in the comments, feel free to toss them in. We'll take them kind of throughout the show, and then at the end we'll have a period of just Q&A. So if you have any, please be sure to just pop them in the chat. All right, so we'll start with, let's see, how did Two Frugal Dudes start?
It started over pie.
Okay.
So Sean and I have been friends for a very long time, and we've been involved in the software development community here in the Hampton Roads area. And it was tradition after every meeting, we'd go out to Village Inn, a local diner here in town, and we'd have pie. And, well, Sean and I were having conversations that were unrelated to software development. We were talking about money, and I come from a Dave Ramsey background, paying off all my debts, putting money towards retirement. Sean was active in the FIRE community, the Financial Independence Retire Early movement. And we were talking about all the stuff we were learning, the blogs we were reading, books we were reading. And we had this discussion one night and went, we are really losing a lot of these conversations to the table. They will never happen again outside of this context. And we said, maybe we should record some of these conversations and put them out as a podcast and just see what happens. And then 3 years later, here we are today.
Fantastic. Very important side question. What kind of pie was your favorite at Village Inn?
Oh my gosh, I'm an apple pie guy. I love good apple pie. So a lot of apple pie. I've tried their carrot cake a couple times, really good. Not pie, but still it's in the dessert family.
It's in the dessert, yeah, but we'll count that.
I love apple pie.
Gotcha.
That's my go-to.
Gotcha.
That's important.
What restaurant did you start Journey to 100 Million in?
To be honest with you, it was probably Denny's. I'm not even joking. So my business partner, Eric Olson, and I frequent Denny's for business partner lunches. And the reason we do that is it's close to the office. It's affordable, so we're frugal with that. And, you know, when we started the company, we wanted to go somewhere that was close and cheap. And we had the joke that when we do hit the $100 million, that we'll still go to Denny's. And so, yeah, it probably did actually start talking about it in Denny's. So
that's fantastic. There's something about food and how it's able to just, like, get people talking. That it's a really good transition into, like, an audio format podcast, you know? So speaking of audio, what kind of setups did you guys each have? We'll start with Kevin Daisy for this one.
Yeah, so when we first started talking about doing this podcast, it really was just our interest in getting into voice and flash briefings with Alexa, and kind of turned into a podcast from there. But we started very basic. We started, you know, in my car, driving to the office, and I would use a little lavalier mic in my phone. Not great quality, but it got the job done. It recorded it. We were able to, you know, put it out there. So at that time, it was really just videos or sharing it as an audio clip before we even figured out what a podcast, how to do one was, you know. So.
And Journey to 100 Million actually started as like a YouTube series, right? Because there's I know that on the Array Digital YouTube, there's many videos that were Journey related.
Yeah, well, I guess to the roots of it, I had to give a talk to a business community group. And we were presenting on our company, Array Digital, and where we were, what our goals were. And so I just titled the slideshow "Journey to 100 Million." Not really thinking about it too much, and I give this whole talk. And when we started to do a podcast back, it was actually this year in January when we started it. that name just stuck. Journey to 100 million, and we put out that public goal, and that's just kind of how the title came about. So,
Nice.
yeah.
Good. And Two Frugal Dudes, did that start in a similar fashion where it was kind of more run and gun in the beginning and production value is kind of like built over time, or like what's the beginning look like?
The beginning started as I actually had a Blue Yeti, and
Fantastic.
my co-host Sean went and bought a cheap enough, an ATR 2100, which is a good podcasting mic. And he spent a little bit of money, but we recorded everything over Skype, and we used free tools to record the conversation. And it hasn't really moved too much more than that. We use Zoom now for recording, and because we always bring on guests, so trying to have both of us in remote locations and a guest in a remote location, trying to get consistent audio quality and setup. We just found the more complex the tool, the less likely we were to get a good recording.
Yep.
So sticking with Zoom, where I can just record everything to the cloud, go download it later,
Nice.
it just works. And we just stick with what works. And the audio quality is good enough to the point where it doesn't sound like I'm an ocean away. It sounds like I'm in your car with you when you're listening to the podcast, which is all that matters.
Absolutely. So it sounds like between both of you guys, the starting of the podcast, both there was not the emphasis on achieving studio quality sound. There was the emphasis on just getting some equipment that works to start. To get started is probably the most important part, right? So
Yeah, I was gonna say my tip would be just get started. You're not gonna be the best, and you're not gonna love your voice either for a while. You're gonna just hate it. I still hate mine now, but
We have 130 episodes of Two Frugal Dudes. I've listened to 3 because I cannot stand listening to myself. I'm
It's
not even
so
going to
weird.
watch this afterwards.
yeah.
Can't
This is
listen
it.
to myself.
We'll never see him again.
well, thankfully we can at least hear it. So.
Yeah.
So really, I think the biggest tip is just start. And if you, what I've seen, well, actually Eric's been to some podcast trade shows and summits and stuff like that. And the biggest problem people have is just the quality and editing, and they spend all their time in that. And people don't really care. I mean, sometimes my audio is not the best, or I might be in my garage. Like, I record wherever I have to.
Yeah.
And you can't let that hang you up. You just got to get the thing out there and post it. So.
Yep.
So much of it is if you do any public speaking, the same rules apply. If you have ums and buts and uhs, those come over audio so much more than they do in person. So just be a little bit cautious of how you're speaking to the microphone.
Yes, absolutely. How would you recommend someone start the podcast? I think we've kind of touched on that a little bit. So what do you think are the bare essentials that anyone needs to start a podcast?
I think everyone already has the bare essentials.
Okay.
We all have cell phones. Pull out your iPhone, your Android, whatever. They have a voice recorder of some sort on it. Hit record, start talking. And the number of people I've met who have started that way, it blew my mind. And it's enough to get started. You need a place to host it. Those are details. But just recording the initial couple episodes, just use your phone. And then once you realize this is something you want to do, go buy a $50 to $100 microphone and start upping your game a little bit.
And I think that, obviously having the idea, what you're going to talk about, what's the purpose.
Yeah.
That definitely helps if you can figure that out. I don't know. It took us a while to kind of really figure that out and hone it in as well, which I guess could kind of lead to probably a question you have is, episodes and coming up with ideas. And
So it's very convenient that both of the podcasts have very defined themes. So Two Frugal Dudes is financial focus for the most part.
Personal finance.
Personal finance, and then Journey to 100 Million is entrepreneurial and marketing focused, and then business focused. So like both of those categories are pretty narrow lanes for things you can talk about. They allow for offshoots and tangents, but how do you come up with ideas for the podcast as you continue to make episodes? I mean, you said you were over 100 episodes. I know Journey is over almost 300, so it's it has to be a struggle, right, to find new ideas. So Kevin, why don't you start us off?
Okay, yeah. So I think we're about 300 episodes because we do a daily podcast and flash briefing, and we'll put out more about all this stuff too. But ours is daily, so it definitely requires a backlog, and we have to constantly come up with ideas. So yeah, for me, like So Eric, my business partner, he's on the podcast with me, and we alternate days. He might do 20 or 30 at a time on a weekend. Me, I don't work as well that way. I have to have fresh things that have happened. But for me, it's what's happened. So I can look at my calendar this week or my notes or my wins from our daily meetings that we have. And all the stuff I need to talk about is right there. Mm-hmm. You know, as an issue, a sales thing, a new client, a problem with, employee, and no matter what it is, but it's a timely thing for me. And every time I feel like I'm out of ideas, next week I'm going to have tons of, more ideas. Of course, Sean and everybody else on the team will throw out ideas, things we can do too. That's very helpful. But as we go, 300 episodes, we hope to continue doing this all the way through. We have a lot more ideas that we need to come up with. So it is a struggle sometimes to sit there and jot out what we're going to talk about. But once you get the idea, and it's been fresh on our minds, then I can roll right through it.
Gotcha.
So
for us, it's we spend a lot of time in our watering holes. Where's our community, our people, our tribe? And because we're in personal finance, we hang out with a group of folks called the FinCon community. And FinCon is a conference, a movement for personal finance media. 2 years ago, I'm losing track now. My co-host Sean and I were recording an episode. We had a guest on. He said, "Are you going to FinCon?" And we went, "No, what's FinCon? Tell us about FinCon."
Oh, wow.
And it just happened to be in Dallas, Texas, about 2-hour drive away from where
Sean's in Austin, right?
He was in Austin. He's not in Austin anymore. But he was like, I'm just going to drive up. He slept in his car for a week, and he went to FinCon. And because we record on a consistent day every week, and we have it on our calendars, it's just something that we always do. And he came back and said, "Okay, I booked out the entire year." But he met enough people, did enough networking, just had guests for
Wow.
like 8-9 consecutive months, just from people that he met at FinCon.
Wow.
And it's just on a variety of subjects, that all dealing with personal finance, all on brand. And yeah, he came back and said, "All right, I booked this out for a year." I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to take a vacation. I'm never going to get anything done. There's no breaks. But it was really good for us because it built that consistency, it built that backlog, and it really got us into the muscle memory of doing the podcast. It's like, all right, well, it's Friday, it's time to do the podcast. I think at the time we were doing Wednesday evenings. That's another good piece of advice. Just pick a time that you're going to do the podcast and just put it on your calendar. Make it the thing you do.
Yeah.
Definitely, like, the next thing after starting, I would say, is probably consistency for any creative outlet, right?
Yeah.
Is like, you can start anything, but you need to keep doing the thing for it to go anywhere, right? Like, if you did a podcast 4 times, that's it.
Yeah.
And maybe when you do one in 6 months, but you guys have been able to keep consistent schedules for 3 years and a year. It's impressive. It's a really, and I think setting a time aside for that is probably the easiest and best way to go, I would say.
Kevin hit the nail on the head of having a backlog. So just give yourself a little bit of leeway in case you do have to miss a recording, and it's not you're not skipping a week or skipping a day.
And I struggle with that. Definitely, it's hard to keep up. So, it's something I keep working on. But yeah, set some time aside, have a place to go do it. Yeah, that's going to be your best bet. So.
Where do you record your podcast?
So majority right now I do in my garage. I have a workbench set up. I have my equipment right there. I bring my laptop, plug it in, and just record. I usually get about 3 to 4 at a time. This morning, though, I was in the office here early before everybody else showed up and got a couple episodes out. So for me, I'm very mobile. Eric does his right in the office here and comes in on a weekend when no one's here. And it's hard to do it when everyone else can hear you talking. You don't project as well. So if you got a nice quiet place you can go, that's helpful.
Yeah.
How about you? So it's at home in front of a computer?
It's at home. I have a shed in my backyard I turned into an office.
Nice.
And I do all my recording out there.
Nice.
Every single week.
Secluded, away from anything.
It's away from the kids and my wife,
That's important.
It's the constant struggle.
I don't know how many episodes I've been recording, and the kids come out in the garage, and I just have to stop and back up and re-edit it. So, but that's just part of the struggle. It's hard.
So there's definitely 2 different styles of podcasts between the 2 of you. So you and Eric do single person podcasts, kind of pontificating about one subject for 5 minutes. and you guys do long form podcasts with hosts and guests going back and forth.
That's right.
Do you have any, like, what do you guys listen to more? Do you have any thoughts on, like, anything about the other styles, and maybe how you found your own personal style of podcasting?
For me, I love a combination of long form and short form. Like a 5-minute podcast. What I love about your all's podcast is it's easy to digest. You get in, you get out. It's like, oh, well, I learned something, and
we hope you learned something.
I'll tune in tomorrow. Yeah. I have another podcast I listen to that's 2-3 hours long, and it's an investment in time. I don't listen to it straight. I'll listen to it a little bit here, a little bit there, and so on. For Two Frugal Dudes, we actually just look at data. Mm-hmm. We were recording for 2 years, and before going to FinCon, we would go look at our data. All right, Apple Podcasts, Google Play will tell you how long does someone listen to the podcast before they stop listening. And we learned that they were not listening to a third of the podcast on average. So we reduced the size of the podcast, or the length of the podcast, and actually took that and made it its own episode. Take out the stuff we enjoy doing, put it as its own episode, and we do it live in front of our community. But then we have the guest episode, and we were able to double our output, but we didn't double our effort. We were still doing the same amount of effort and getting more material out of it.
That's awesome.
And you said you got more downloads.
More downloads, yeah. Consistently awesome. Going up now. We'll come back in a month or two and see how it's working out for us.
Fantastic. And so how did you guys come to you and Eric switching off podcasts?
I don't remember exactly how we came up with that we're going to switch back and forth. I think we didn't want to do like an interview style. And so I think it just made sense that he records one, I'll record one, and we'll just stagger the days. Mm-hmm. We knew we both wanted to be part of it. Mm-hmm. And, as me and Eric talk and go through this journey of running a business and growing it, there's just so much we talk about, again, kind of like at the table over lunch or our one-on-ones, that's just, wow, this would be great content. And so we just wanted to start recording it. So we just kind of came up with this, well, I'll go, you go. I'll go, you go. And sometimes we might cover the same exact topic, but we are a little bit different. We have different views, different ways we're going to talk about and handle something. So it's kind of cool for our listeners to hopefully see what I think versus what he thinks. And it's not always going to be the same. But of course, when we make business decisions, we come together and make a decision.
Absolutely.
But we might have different views and feelings on something.
There's also, you can't have this assumption that someone has listened to all 300 episodes. Yeah. So if you
I'm pretty sure everyone's has. I mean,
everyone watching right now has.
Absolutely.
See, Alan Hagerman, I bet he has.
But if we do the same thing with Two Frugal Dudes, we'll repeat topics, or we'll bring on a different guest for a topic we covered maybe 3-4 months ago. And because someone new to the show might not have listened to that old episode. So we go over the same things. We start seeing the patterns, and we'll talk about, on episode blah, 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 we talked to so-and-so, and they mentioned XYZ. And it actually leads into deeper conversations because we can fall back on these previous interviews.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's a pretty common tactic throughout a lot of content online. I know I follow a lot of photography people on YouTube, and I can't tell you how many of them do an updated what's in my camera bag for each year. And then maybe around this time, a lot of people do on holiday content. Going back and revisiting some stuff with a new take or a new twist is definitely a good way to keep your content refreshed. Yep. Absolutely. So speaking of recurring and things that continue, what is next for your all's podcasts? What's next on the horizon?
For us, it's how do we make money off our audience? And this, Marketers Anonymous. This is something that people worry about. You want to do this for fun, but you also want to try to get something out of it. We took a stance of not getting sponsorship for our episodes, so we're trying to do things outside of the show itself that we can monetize and provide an insane amount of value, but get a little bit of money from it. So we do online summits. That's our current engagement, and then we're also looking at online courses and books and things that we can provide our audience to give them more value than just the podcast, but get a little bit of dollars from it as well.
Absolutely.
I think for us, right now we are our own sponsor, so Red Digital is the sponsor of our podcast. We put the time and money and effort into it. As far as monetizing ours, we don't have any plans on doing that necessarily. We're trying to grow our followers, our downloads. I think you guys are hit 20,000 downloads.
20,000, yeah.
And we're probably in the 3,000 to 4,000 a month range, which we're happy with that. Now I think it's trying to figure out how do we grow it more than that and get consistent. We are going to be bringing on some special guests. We actually have some of our team members that are going to be popping in on some episodes. So we're going to mix it up a little bit versus just me and Eric all the time. So we are looking to do that soon. Mm-hmm. I think we recorded one that Katya did already. Mm-hmm. So we're going to spice it up a little bit. But, I think it's just driving home, as we learn things, and hopefully it's helpful to people. And we'll just continue to put out, hopefully get better. We're getting better for sure. It's becoming funner and more and easier to do now that you're used to doing it. And so just look forward to sharing more as we grow. And we're hitting more milestones and goals with our business. We'll just have more to talk about.
Fantastic. Well, I think we're running out of time, so we're going to answer a couple of these questions that have come in. If you guys have questions that you would like answered, now's definitely the time to ask them. Again, Kevin Griffin and Kevin Daisy and Eric Olson are going to be at Marketers Anonymous next Friday at noon to talk about podcasting and what it can do for your business, and also just their experiences. Similar to what they did here, I'm sure there's more to go over in the talks.
We'll mention we'll put out a blog post or some about
absolutely
some of the equipment and basics.
So in between now and Marketers Anonymous, if you're very interested in podcasting, we will be overviewing some of the equipment that we use here at Array Digital and some recommended tactics for implementing equipment to get the best quality for the best budget, and kind of get you started on podcasting. That'll appear on thisisarray.com. So we have two questions here from Alan Hagerman. How much post-production do you do, and what do you use? Audacity, GarageBand? I know here at Array we use Audition and Audacity. And
we use TriCast as our distribution platform to get it out on everything. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
We do our editing in Audacity, just great free tool, and then we do our hosting on Libsyn. We're grandfathered into an old plan on Libsyn, so it's really cheap for us to host.
Frugal.
Very frugal.
Very frugal.
Absolutely.
But there's a lot of good hosters out there. I have a friend who runs one called Transistor FM, which is a great, if you've never done hosting before, just go sign up, and he makes it really easy.
Fantastic. And live via something like Twitch or a podcast always recorded. So you guys were doing live Facebook.
We do live Facebook. Yeah. Our community's on Facebook, so it's just easier to go to where the community is than trying to just put out everywhere and just see who watches.
Gotcha. Absolutely. Have you thought about any other live streaming platforms, or maybe splitting the stream off to multiple places at once or anything like that?
For some of the professional stuff I do outside of Two Frugal Dudes, I do Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, and Mixer, all that good stuff. But for Two Frugal Dudes specifically, because our community are like moms and professionals and folks like that, they're not on Twitch. They're probably not on YouTube either, at least not for live stuff. So sending them to Facebook has been a better bet.
Absolutely.
And for us, I think Eric's played around a little bit with doing Instagram Live while he records. Of course, our recordings are very much delivering a message quickly in and out. I've signed up for LinkedIn Live, so I'm hoping to get approved for that. But it's kind of tough to get.
I know people at LinkedIn, and they said they can't even get into LinkedIn.
Oh my gosh,
it's a backlog.
Very hard to get in.
So for me, it's just my current situation with the recording. It wouldn't make sense, but I wouldn't mind doing that. It would give you the extra content. People can see the episode really before you even got edited, which would be kind of cool. So yeah, that's something I would definitely consider doing. Probably not Twitch. I think we would use Facebook.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's going to just about do it. So I want to thank you, Kevin, for coming in, and thank you, Kevin, for coming in.
Oh, yeah, it was right down the hall.
Where can we find Two Frugal Dudes?
Two Frugal Dudes is at twofrugaldudes.com. Doesn't matter if it's the number 2 or the word 2. we're there. We're in every podcast player you can find, Two Frugal Dudes, and on Facebook at Two Frugal Dudes, and Instagram Two Frugal Dudes. Two Frugal Dudes everywhere.
They're all over
it's
the
all
place.
Two Frugal Dudes.
Fantastic branding.
Yeah.
Where can they find Journey to 100 Million or anything that Array does?
So Journey to 100 Million, you can find on any platform, iTunes, you name it. Also, you can go to Alexa and get it on your flash briefing. Since we have it under 10 minutes, you can get it on flash briefings. So yeah, on any platform out there, just look for Journey to 100 Million. And then of course Array Digital. Our handle for most things is This Is Array or thisisarray.com. Check us out.
Fantastic. I want to thank both of you guys for coming on. Kevin Squared, I super appreciate you guys joining us for the live stream. These two gentlemen will be at Blue Moon Tap House this upcoming Friday at noon to talk about podcasting. Eric J. Olson will also be in attendance. So please be sure to come and check that out. Thank you guys so much for coming on today. It's super, super good to have you.
So you guys, happy Friday.
Absolutely.
Take care, everyone.
Have a good one, guys.